Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach.
Hi, welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. Today's podcast is all about why attending live events make you a better coach. And this is something that I've thought about a lot, and I have so many personal stories to share. And so that's what today's podcast will likely be about, is my own personal stories. But also, I remember so clearly how I felt after my first live event. So I'm going to start there, and then we're going to build the rest of the podcast episode about why I think it's so important. It was 2018. I had gone through my nurse coach training. At the end of the training, we had a live, immersive experience, and it was 3 or 4 days long. I can't quite remember. It was a 3-hour drive from my house on the coast in California. And so I drove to it. I saw all of my colleagues from nurse coach training, and we were together for 3 or 4 days, eating together, doing workshops together, doing things together, crying together, laughing together, dancing together. And when I left that live event, at the time I had 2 small children. When I left that live event, I remember I was so busy. My practice was full at that time. And I actually had to pull over and do a sales call on the way home from the event because I had taken those 4 days off, and I had an influx of people interested in Half-Life of Enthusiasm. I didn't want to wait. And so I thought I could just pull over, find internet, do a call on the way home. And I remember who I was on that call and how the client was an immediate yes. And I almost don't remember what I said or like my approach or my style. It was just who I was being, because I had just experienced so much of my own transformation, my own intense growth, that I was just on fire for transformation. I was on fire for this work. And do you know when you meet somebody and they are in love with something, they're obsessed with something, they're so passionate about something, it's just so magnetic to be around them. This could be someone who loves sports, someone who loves art, someone who loves knitting, a musician who's just immersed in their music, and you meet these people and secretly you're like, God, I want that. I want to have that passion. I want to find my thing that makes me feel about life the way that this thing makes them feel about life. And I had that. And I had that after my live event. And I remember asking my first business mentor, how often do you plan on like your own retreat or like a medicine ceremony or your own retreat from your life that is focused solely on you and your experience and your skills and your transformation? And she said, my whole professional career, I've thought that quarterly I needed to do something, but at least twice a year. And that always stuck with me as like, it's non-optional. It's like not an optional thing. You don't want to be coaching behind Zoom for years without any like actual personal interaction, in-person interactions with people, because there's something different there. And so I want to talk about why I think this is not optional, why I think it's so important, and the reasons why I think it's important, and also some ideas, because it doesn't have to break the bank. It doesn't have to be Joe Dispenza retreat for a week. It could be a day. It could be lots of different things. It could be a sound bath. It could be an in-person session with an energy healer. It could be something small, but we want something. All right. So I feel like a lot of times for live events, and especially business events, that I thought I was just going for networking and learning, but what I really needed was to be in a room with other people that were further along than me. I'll give you another example. This is different than like a transformational or coaching event. We went to a business mastermind in Napa about 2 years ago, and we finished up with that mentor sense, but the room we were in, I think it was 38 entrepreneurs. It was Shelby and I had gone together. We were in a beautiful location, really well executed retreat. And everybody in that room was a 7-figure earner. Their business was a 7-figure revenue business or higher, some much higher. And I just noticed what was the same out of all these entrepreneurs. We had people from different countries, men, women. And what I noticed about them is that they weren't special. They were pretty authentic. They had their own struggles, concerns, fears, just like we did in the beginning of our practice. It made me realize you do not have to be special to have a successful business. It made me realize that problems don't go away. No matter what stage you're at in business, you're going to have quote unquote problems and struggles and fears. And what I noticed about everybody in that room is that I pretty much liked them all. There was something very likable about them. And most of us did well in person. We enjoyed it. I'm an introvert. I think I share that a lot. I don't like to do a whole lot of like the after stuff. Like I can do the whole day stuff, but I need an hour at night without anybody else. I want to be alone for part of the day just to integrate. And that event changed the way that I saw my life, what was important. It stretched me. It was the impetus to a lot of the things that we have now. Nurse Life Coach Academy did not exist. And I think that event helped us create Nurse Life Coach Academy. And so I've been going to live events. I've been to one this year. I went to Leon Vanderpool's retreat in Florida. And there was like 3 things that happened at that retreat that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. So I think that if you're going to be a professional coach long term, then I think investing in live opportunities to go do something live for specific reasons. It could be for business. It could be for personal transformation. It could be a plant medicine ceremony. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know that it matters, but there is something about packing your bags, leaving to go to a live event with the intention to grow or to learn or to come out of your normal routine, to break state, to mix it up, to get away from being mom or wife or husband, to not be at work, to not be on call, to eat delicious food. I think that even the flight there, you're usually reading a book and maybe meeting somebody on the plane. And the whole thing, from the planning and looking forward to it, to the packing and arriving at the airport, to the flight, to the arrival, to the experience, to the goodbyes, I don't know that they're optional if you want to be an extraordinary coach. And I think when I was sitting with this, there is such a big difference between consuming and immersing. So I know a lot of us, we do coaching podcasts, we read books, workshops. Most of our businesses ran on Zoom. I know you're here. And we're kind of always multitasking. Our brain is absorbing, but not as much as it would be if I was sitting in your living room with you, if I was hosting the workshop. Because live events, they're immersive. You feel things that you didn't expect to feel will come up live that won't come up in your office chair. It just won't. You're present in a different way. You remember it in a different way. And there's something called mirror neurons. And when you're in a room with real humans, mirror neurons fire differently because you're not just learning intellectually, you're embodying knowledge. And I will say this is like such a clear memory for me. And I love this memory is when we were in Napa at that live event. And I think we went around the room and we introduced ourselves and what our intention was. My deepest intention, I know this about me, is, and since I was a little girl, I've been like an observer. So I usually, when I'm new in a group, I don't come in loud and command attention. I'm pretty laid back. I'm an observer first. I observe, get my bearings, and then I start to interact. But in my observations, I think that it's almost like transmission. So as all these entrepreneurs were going around the room introducing themselves and telling their story, I learned so much from them, not from the words that they said, but from their presence, by the way that their face looked when they spoke, the language that they used, their body language, the emotional state that they were in. I learned, I took something from each of them. And one of my gifts is if I'm around people for 2 or 3 days, like I rise, I change. How I see the world shifts, and I know exactly what I want to take and what I don't want to take home with me to integrate. And I'm sorry, I've been on amazing Zooms and amazing masterclasses so many times. It is not the same. It is like a 60% representation of the thing. And as a professional coach that uses Zoom for most of my teaching and my events, like I know this. And until we have VR goggles or transportation devices, I think that this is just the way that the world works. But I think the way that we make best use of all of our consumption is to plan times to immerse and to really learn, to really absorb. So I want to talk about how live events improve your coaching specifically. And I think the first one is just presence and listening skills, because you have to practice just by being there. And it's different than being in a lecture or a huddle. It's different, especially when you're at the kind of events that I go to and the kind of events that we host, where there's intentional experiences of embodiment, where there is things like sound baths or mindfulness practices or guided visualizations. And events are really a masterclass in active listening, even outside the sessions. I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted after live events because I'm so present, and I try to be present with everybody that I meet, with making eye contact with each person that I meet. That is so much richer than Zoom. I feel like Zoom, if how we create presence, if we equated it to the difference between like a watering can or a fire hose, I think on Zoom we can approach this through a watering can, but I think in live events you get to experience it like a fire hose. And here's the cool part. It translates. If you've experienced presence at a higher level, like a fire hose level, just completely immersed, like powerful, your next Zoom session that you have with a client will contain some of that. It will be different. And there's no other way to raise your threshold for your presence besides live events. And there's an exercise I did at a live event, and I've done in several live events, and it was a version of eye gazing, where you sit silently and you stare at a person's eye in front of you, like their right eye, and they stare at your right eye for like an extended period of time. It is deeply uncomfortable when you first start, and then it becomes not uncomfortable, and then like very cool spiritual things happen. And I remember after I did that exercise, it was extremely powerful, psychedelic, really, but completely sober, but it was a psychedelic experience for many of us. And I remember feeling like making eye contact at the grocery store, making eye contact with a client, or making eye contact with my kids' friends' parents. Eye contact got easier. I could hold eye contact with anyone with zero nervous system response. So for those of you listening to this who know that you get nervous, like you dart your eyes around, there's like habits that you have to make yourself more comfortable around other people. If you want to expand that, like live events and some of these presence exercises will do that. That one really, I noticed that one so much. I became instantly more intense, but in like a good way. That translated to my presence in every interaction I had as I built my business. When I did live events, I always tell our students, it's like the goal as a professional life coach is to make it weird. Make it weird. Be weird. Be different. People hire us because they want their lives to be different. People don't hire us because we fit every single box of what culture says we should do. Uniqueness, authenticity, like all that shines through your eyes and your presence. And so we want to build ourselves to be able to be that easily, without a whole lot of effort. I don't know how you do that through Zoom. And this is another huge one. I think after a live event, or identity changes, because oftentimes you're doing coaching and you're doing coaching back and forth. And when you walk away from the event, you don't feel like you're an aspiring coach or you're practicing to be a coach. You feel like I already did. I just did whatever I just did, and I am that. And so it helps with imposter syndrome. It makes you feel more connected to humanity, and it expands all of your skills. And many breakthroughs happen not during, but between sessions. A lot of the time, the good stuff is the conversations that you have at the lunch table or the dinner table. A lot of times it's the unexpected that you run into a facilitator as you're walking and you get to have like this interaction with the facilitator. And this has happened to me so many times. I'll give you guys another great example. For those of you who don't know who Dr. Zach Bush is, in my early days of functional medicine, when I was really healing from my chronic illness, this was probably in 2018 or 19. I went to a conference in Reno it was a regenerative health conference, and he was one of the speakers, the keynote speakers. And I mean, he's an incredible speaker, not a dry eye, so passionate, so smart, had so much presence. If you had Dr. Zach Bush in a room, and if you were imagining that everybody in the room was a light bulb, he is brighter, period. We all felt it. And Spirit had me leave to go do something. I ran into him right outside of the event center, and I got to have a picture with him. And I felt so grateful that I got to have a picture with this man that I just admired on stage in front of, 500 people. And so there's these experiences that we open ourselves up for the universe to talk to us, for God to meet with us, because it's difficult to have those when you're in your everyday environment. If we're in our everyday environment, we've got kids to drop off in the morning, and then we're going to make breakfast, and then we brush our teeth, and there's all these things that we do. And so a lot of it's on autopilot. The brain wants to save energy. And so we're constantly on some version of autopilot. And while we really practice as professional coaches to get present in our office, 30 minutes before, something was happening, or maybe you fought with your husband or your wife. When you're at a live event, by day 3, by day 2, like some of that falls away, and you're just left with more capacity to learn. It's so potent. It's just incredibly potent. I'll give you another example. One of the most profound spiritual experiences that I've ever had in my entire life happened when I did my Healing Touch training. And I believe this was Healing Touch level 3. And Healing Touch is kind of like Reiki. It's hands-on healing. It is, there's different techniques. You go through trainings, level 1, level 2, level 3. Those trainings are done through studying and books, and also practicing, but also being in person and practicing with one another. Not unlike our coaching live events. It's very similar. And on day 1, we were practicing on one another, all the things. Was exhausted when I got home. So you're out of your environment kind of. So you go there all day long. This one I got to just drive to. So I got to go home, sleep, get back up, come back out for day 2. And day 2, some of the muck's gone because you just spent day 1 with all these wonderful people. The end of day 2, it was my turn to be worked on. And I was worked on by a woman. I think she was a hospice nurse. And I had the most extraordinary spiritual experience of my entire life. I was laying on the table and my eyes closed, deeply relaxed. I think the session was 20 to 30 minutes, so I had been there a while. And I knew that my healer, because of the technique that we were doing, she was coming up to put her hands on my shoulders because we were coming to completion. So I knew that's where she was around the table. But at that time, I felt 2 hands grab my ankles, like firm, warm hands grab my ankles. And it kind of scared me because I knew we weren't doing 2-on-1s. So I was like, well, who's at the bottom of the table holding, like, where did this person appear from? And as I felt those hands on my ankles, immediately my eyes are closed. I can feel and sense a tall male figure at the foot of the bed. He was gold and tall. And he was communicating with me. And I'm going to get teary-eyed just thinking about this. It was so profound. And for a minute, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember you. It was like I couldn't imagine how I had forgotten this man. Like, this man is with me all the time. We're so close. We've always been together. We've never been apart. All of this is like rushing back to me. And it's happening all in an instant. All of a sudden, I can tell my eyes are crying. I've got water just falling out of my closed eyes. And at the time, my context for that was he must be my spirit guide. And my new context is it was likely Jesus. And I don't know that it matters what we perceive it to be, but it was this experience where I knew I touched the divine, and I knew that I was never alone. And I knew that this man, this entity at the bottom of the bed that came out of that realm to put his beautiful hands on my ankles, that was a moment that I would never forget. And I remember sharing with everybody this experience. And I felt high. So I did not feel safe to like drive home. And I remember thinking, man, should I get somebody to pick me up? Because I felt so out of it. Like my senses were different. I felt like I had taken something and I was totally sober. And so I was driving home. I had about an hour drive home. And so I was really careful. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is a moment I'll never forget. Like that was more real than this experience of life. And I'm saying this story to you all because that event would never have happened in my bedroom on Zoom. That event would have never happened if I hadn't said yes to that live experience. And I can tell you from facilitating so many retreats, at being at so many retreats and experiences, this happens all the time. At our last retreat, we had a client who was going through a guided visualization, and Archangel Michael came and started speaking to her. And since then, she has this relationship and brings that into her coaching practice. And so that existed because for 3 days, she wasn't a mother of 5. She wasn't making breakfast and doing laundry and working on her business and all the things. Like she wasn't that. She was a human immersed in an experience where there is opportunity for things out of the ordinary to occur. There are practical things that happen too. Going to live events, you can meet somebody that could end up being your future business partner. You can meet another coach or another person or a mentor. Like you might meet someone who becomes a significant part of your journey because you're not at home, because you left your house. I'm still kind of feeling that story. I have a lot more of those, but that one really stuck out when I was thinking about sharing with you guys. But for me, even the airport ride and the getting on the plane by myself, the packing, what book I'm going to bring. I've listened to spiritual music or worship music on a flight for 45 minutes, staring out the window with tears in my eyes because I was just having an experience post live event that you just don't get to have when you're in your own environment. And so whether it be an intensive or a retreat or a day thing, I think what I want to put across to you guys is say yes. Say yes to 2 a year. If you can do 4 a year, if you can swing 4 a year, that's even better. Now, when you're in private practice, these are all write-offs. Make it a part of your budget and your practice. Say, hey, to be an awesome coach, to be a transmitter of all that is good, to be able to hold possibility for other humans in the way that you deeply desire to, it is your ethical responsibility to unplug and go put yourself in an environment where you can be filled up in a way that cannot happen from a book or a podcast or class. And certainly not a lecture. So you get skills, you have breakthroughs, and I think being in community regulates your nervous system. Events can bring clarity and excitement back when you've been in a funk. We had to start telling all of our retreat attendees, like, hey, this is kind of like a plant medicine ceremony. After this event, you're not allowed to quit your job for a week, and you're not allowed to break up with your partner for a week. Like you can't make any sudden, ginormous life changes for a week because we know that what happens at retreat changes you, and we want to give you a week to integrate prior to making any big decisions. I mean, this is an actual disclaimer we have to give that I always give. And we also give the advice that when you go back home, if you've had like a profound experience, you may not be ready to talk about it with your husband or your wife or your friends. And so if you come back and everyone's like, how was it? Tell me all about it. You might say, I had profound things happen. I want to sit with it for a little bit. I'd love to share. I'm just not quite ready to share it yet. Because I think sometimes we need to integrate it in. We got to integrate the new version of Laura and who she is at her home, because the Laura that left on Thursday before the event and the Laura that came home on Monday, she's not the same. And before I start talking about it, I want to define it. I want it to settle in. I want it to grab a root. and I want to reflect, and I don't want to rush it. I want to savor it. And we give these at all of our retreats, we give these instructions. And from a practical standpoint, you're going to make more money if you go to live events every year. You're going to make more money as a coach. You just get bigger ideas. You think bigger. You get ideas for content. You remember why you started in the first place. I have seen very profitable partnerships happen at live events. And here's another thing too. If you are in a particularly shitty season, and this is a great story. Earlier this year, we are in August 2025. In December of 2024, we were just in the beginnings of cohort 1 of Nurse Life Coach Academy. We had the Successful Nurse Coaches. Shelby was going to give birth to her third and had to go out on leave a little bit early. Our primary office manager / practice manager, our right-hand person, quit without any notice for personal reasons. And so in December of 2024, we had a really strong team of 3. In January of 2025, it was me for not very long. Poor Shelby came back and tried to help a little bit, but my goodness, she had just had a traumatic birth, very little sleep. And so it was kind of overnight that the burden became, twice as big. And I kind of went into doer mode. I did what I needed to do. It all worked. I learned so much. I'm so grateful for those few months because I know what I'm made of. And when push comes to shove, and if you're in business, I'm a really good freaking person to be in business with because I can do what needs to be done as long as I sleep 8 hours a night. I can do anything. I really know that. But Leon had his retreat in Florida, which I could drive to. It was a 13-hour drive. And it was in April. And financially, I didn't want to spend the money. At the same time, we had a house that didn't sell. We had a $40,000 foundation thing that happened. My dad had been diagnosed with cancer and I was helping with his cancer treatment. It's like one of those moments. I'll give you this story too. Our house had been on the market for 5 months. We were paying 2 mortgages because it was empty. It was one of our rentals. And we sold it. And then I come inside one day and Evan goes, "You're not going to believe what happened." And I could see in his face, it probably wasn't good, but he was almost giggly. And he said, "You're not going to believe what happened." I was like, "Our sale fell through. Our buyer fell through." And he's like, "Yeah, but do you want to know why it fell through?" And I was like, "No, why?" He's like, "Because our buyer died." It was wild. Our buyer flew out, bought our house. His wife was at home and he passed away from a heart attack while he was in the process of closing on our house. So we had to start from square one again. This is the background, right? And I remember thinking, I don't want to go to retreat. I am so burnt out on coaching. I don't know what I need, but I don't even know if I can slow down enough to enjoy it. And I told Shelby, I was like, I think I got to go because I think I have to just force myself out of this environment or I'm just going to keep working because there's still so many challenges that require time and energy that if I don't, I think it's going to be really bad. And she agreed. And so my husband agreed and we sent me to retreat and paid for retreat. And it wasn't like it was on a credit card. I'll just say that. It wasn't like was saving for it. And I remember driving down to retreat, even just the 13-hour drive down to Florida, you guys. I don't drive much because I work from home. The drive was nice. I stopped at a crystal shop. I had good food. I saw the beach. The drive was awesome. I liked the hotel I stayed in. It was cold. The bed was comfortable. I watched some Netflix. And when I got to retreat, they were from all over the world and everybody had these grand intentions. And I remember looking at everybody saying, my intention for this retreat is to do nothing and to be holistically selfish. I expect nothing of myself. I am just here. Because for me, the retreat was to not completely burn out. And so every retreat, you'll have a different intention. And that's what I mean is that even if you're at a down season, sometimes the live event, even if you don't want to go to it or it doesn't make sense, or the timing doesn't make sense, sometimes it's the best decision that you can make. I always say, when you're trying to decide, just sit with it. You'll know. It's an intuitive feeling. Don't intellectualize live events. Don't do that to yourself. I don't think live events, that's the right way to make a decision about a live event, is it's like a pro and con column. I don't think you intellectually decide to go spend money and time on something that you have no control over, don't even really know what you're signing up for. I just don't know that that's the best way to make that decision. Like, check in. Does your soul need a damn break from the monotony? And if you're feeling down, live events can sometimes be the best medicine. And I highly recommend it. At Leon's retreat, it was beautiful. And just like his work, there's a spiritual thread to all of it. And there was an ashram next to the retreat center. And I went to this ashram, and it was a guru who was, I think she was 39-year-old Jewish woman from New York, and like a proclaimed kind of atheist type. And she had decided to start meditating for some reason. And in her meditation, this is the story of how this all happened. In her meditation, Christ came down to her and said, "You will create a center that will teach the masses that all ways are my way." And as a Jewish atheist, this was profound for her. And she ended up moving down to Florida, opening up an ashram. These beautiful grounds. Around the grounds, every world religion is represented. It was one of the most, there was just moments when I visited that place that I was like, oh, that's why I'm here. Like, just that moment or that thing or this feeling or this experience, like that snapshot, that was it. That filled something that I didn't know was depleted. That answered something that I didn't know I was questioning. It felt so good that it didn't, like, all the other parts didn't matter. I got my money's worth in that moment from just that one thing. And then there was, of course, 5 other things that I loved. And so oftentimes we go to a live event and we get the one thing that we didn't know we needed. We get the one answer that we didn't realize we were so unclear on. But you will never leave a live event without something. And that's something I don't believe can be delivered through a phone coaching session or a Zoom coaching session or even a single coaching session sometimes in person. I think it requires us as humans to get out of our environment, to shake things up a bit. And this can be a day-long thing. It could be a week-long thing. It could be a few-night thing. But I think that professional coaches, and the ones that I know that I've worked with, they all do this. It's part of their practice. It's like part of like changing your own oil. And so I highly, highly recommend it. So, if this is episode 199, by the way, of the Successful Nurse Coach podcast, we're going to be back here next week with episode 200 with something to celebrate. But I wanted to say this. I believe this is going to go live before our Boone retreat. If you're listening to this and you've been contemplating it, I'm going to be brutally honest here. We underpriced that retreat. We aren't going to make any money on that retreat. We're likely losing $20,000, $30,000 on that retreat. And I'm okay with it because hosting a retreat is no small thing. You get on the hook for a lot of money and you hope that people want to come. And a lot of people don't sign up till the last minute, so you just don't really know. But what I will say is that retreat that we're hosting with Leon is as much for me as it is for each of you. And from an ROI perspective, I cannot guarantee how much money and peace and all the things that you want. I can't guarantee what you're going to get from it, but I can guarantee that you will create the conditions to get any of that faster by saying yes. So I would love to see you there. I would love to be in human contact with you. I would love for you to notice how tall I am, because a lot of times when we do Zoom, we don't even know how tall people are or how short people are. That's like one of the things I notice. I've done so many live events with people I have relationships on Zoom with. And it's like, we kind of know what each other looks like. We know what each other sounds like, but we don't know what each other walks like, or how your body moves when you laugh, or how tall you are. And so at every live event, people will always say, "Oh my goodness, you're so much taller," or "You're so much shorter than I thought." This is funny to me. But we would love to see you there. We'd love to be with you in person, to break bread with you, it's kind of like an adult sleepover. Everything's taken care of. You just show up, you have a notebook, you have something delicious to eat and something, warm to drink in the mountain air. and just to be in community with other human beings on this path. I think that it's worth it. I think that our retreat's priced really reasonable. And I think if you're listening to this and you're contemplating it, you should come. And secondly, if this isn't it, if timing's not right, if you just can't make it for some reason and you're feeling like bummed, then homework is, why don't you start researching in the next 6 months any live events or things that you've thought about? Get something on the books, or at least something in the horizon. So it's at least part of your consciousness. And if Shelby and I know of any live events, we will share them with you guys as well in the community. And thank you so much for letting me be in your ear on episode 199, 199 weeks of doing this thing, of talking to you, of living and breathing nurse coaching, and believing in this mission wholeheartedly. All right, guys, have a beautiful rest of your day. It was only 37 minutes. You got plenty of time to do all the things. And if you want to come to retreat, message us. All right, see ya.